All right. Okay, so let me introduce our guest speaker for tonight. We are very, very privileged, I think, to have with us Ohio's Poet Laureate, and her name is Kari Gunter-Seymour. And I'll just give you a brief, her qualifications, which she's a poet, and she has, if you got a chance to look on her website and read some of her things or check out the book at the library, some beautiful, beautiful writing. She has a bachelor's degree in graphic design and a master's degree in commercial photography. She is our current poet laureate of the state. And if I'm correct, you are the third poet laureate that we have. So it's kind of a new thing for Ohio to have a poet laureate. She was an instructor at the Scripps School of Journalism at Ohio University, and I know that lots of our students from this area go there and become a part of that School of Journalism. She is the founder and executive director of the Women of Ap-uh-Lach-uh project, and she is also the editor of another anthology series called Women Speak. I'm going to let somebody in, all right? And she compiled another anthology called Essentially Athens, Ohio, in which she focuses on landmarks and tales and experiences from that southern county, Athens County. And her work, of course, has been featured in many places, including the Main Street Rag, the Crab Orchard Review, the American Journal of Poetry, and the LA Times. So, and I think one of her biggest qualifications is that she herself is a 9th generation Appalachian, and she just lives like less than a mile from the home that her grandparents farmed for generations. So she's absolutely, you'll see when she delivers her poetry, it's very, very heartfelt, and it's just beautiful. So let's have a pleasant evening together. And Kari, the stage is yours.
I can explain.
Okay.
Here in the foothills, every story begins because someone opens her mouth. My great aunt turned 90 this month. She can still recite all the names. 82 dead, posted mine number 6 Millfield. My cousin weeps firsthand experience regarding Freedom Industries' gross negligence along the Elk River. It is no revelation that you blame us for our twang and Billy Ray Cyrus, for coal's carbon footprint and Make America Great Again. There's a kid with a mullet who lives near me whose pickup truck wields a giant Trump flag, so large he almost ran off the road, the flap obstructing his windshield. I saw him erecting it in the Piggly Wiggly parking lot like he was doing the most patriotic thing ever. Listen, he's a good kid, volunteers at the dog shelter, first one out to shovel on snow days. So much of this willfulness is dependent on generations having been born here, knowing for a fact that poverty is not a moral failing or the result of not working hard enough. His great-great-great-grandfather died at posted mine number 6, having volunteered an extra shift. His granddad in Vietnam. His father works 2 jobs and serves as deacon at the First Baptist Church. I don't know about you, but far beyond the sermon, it's the music that pulls me in. Those gospel sagas steeped in survival and hallelujah, God's hands all over you. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. To touch another with what has touched ourselves. Isn't that the reason humans developed language? To tell stories, shared in caves or on some lonesome prairie around the fire. Why some work hard to uphold the commandments, while others simply command and consume. Do unto others, we say. But you don't want to hear that story. So good evening, everyone. I'm truly, truly honored to be here tonight. Thank you so much. To be here at the Dover Public Library, and I really do feel like I am. I've kind of gotten used to doing the virtual events, and so seeing your faces is a wonderful welcome. And I just want to thank Cheryl for inviting me to come this evening. You may have noticed I have a bit of a twang when I write and speak my work. It's in the voices of my mother, my grandmothers, my aunts, and all the other women who've loved and cared for me. As Cheryl mentioned, I'm a 9th generation Appalachian, and my work is firmly attached to my home soil. And like traditional Southern storytellers, I build characters in my poems, and then I build upon those characters, and all of it comes together in sort of a sense of place, an examination of the long-lasting effects of stereotype and false narratives surrounding Appalachians. And my current collection is entitled A Place So Deep Inside America It Can't Be Seen. And it's an intergenerational journey. And I'll be reading some poems from that tonight. And this first poem is the anchor poem from this book. I come from a place so deep inside America, it can't be seen. White oaks thrash. Moonlight drifts the ceiling as if I'm underwater. Propane coils, warms my bones. Gone are the magic and songs, all the things our grandmothers buried, piles of feathers and angel bones, inscribed by all who came before. When I was 12, my cousins called me ugly, enough to make it last. Tonight, a celebrity on Oprah imagines a future where features can be removed and replaced on a whim. A moth presses wings thin as paper against my window, more beautiful than I could ever be. Ryegrass raised seedy heads beyond the bull thistle and preen. Everything alive aches for more. Oh, thank you, Janet. So all of my people were immigrants. My mama's great grandfather, Adam McClure, came to this country from Belfast, Northern Ireland. And my daddy's people were Welsh. So 9 generations ago, John Gunter III and his wife Joanna left Berkshire, England, and they settled in Henrico County, Virginia. Now, this is right at the turn of the 1700s, and Henrico County was known for its coal mining and its iron industry. And when I think about it, I can hardly imagine it, because to have the courage to leave your country and get on a boat and cross the water and leave behind all you know and come to a new life in a place called America. And there was no guarantee they would make it alive, right? And I think that's just amazing. And my father's people, including me, have lived in Appalachia ever since. And as the title of my talk tonight implies, I say Appalachia. And I just wonder how many of you say Appalachia. When you say it, do you say Appalachia? You say Appalachia? I just have Janet to look at. Janet says Appalachia. Well, good for you, Janet. But I will tell you, there is science behind it, linguistical science, because folks living below I-70 usually say Appalachia, and those above say Appalachia. Now, I don't know exactly why they do that, but they do. So now this is sort of trivia information I'm giving you. You may never ever use it except when you meet another Appalachian, especially maybe here in Ohio. You'll know whether we're from below or above I-90 as to how we say where we're from. If we say we're from Appalachia, you know, we're down southern quite a bit. So again, useless information, but it's always fun. And I tell people the best way to remember is if you don't say it right, I'm going to throw an Ap-uh-Lach-uh. And that's way you can remember how to say Ap-uh-Lach-uh. So this is, oh, you woman of Appalachia, how they work to keep you down, call you fat, shoeless, say you have no teeth. But you got teeth, plenty. Ask any city man thinking to park his fracking machines in your valley. And the earth responds, rewards you in petals, herbs, sweet potato vines. And yes, we know one good fiddle lick makes you forget tired or hungry. And yes, that is your voice, strong and true, front row of the choir come Sunday morning, slipping more than you ought in the donation box because you cannot bear to think of any of your neighbors going without. Generation to generation, childhood to womanhood, failing crops and dying children, the mine sirens doom. Your sorrows like echoes rippling through the holler and entered with careful cursive in the family Bible. So when they call you soft, I say you are not soft. You are limestone. You are flint. You are mountain shine, bead sack proud. You are diamond. It's my praise song for Appalachian women. So I was talking with a couple earlier with Shirley and her husband, and my family's always been musical, and my grandfather taught music in the hills of Tennessee, near Twinton, Tennessee, and it's always played an important part in our lives, music, and it plays a huge role in Appalachian culture. We can have all kinds of differences, and you bring out a fiddle and a guitar and a banjo, and we're all like family, tapping our feet and ready to sing and dance. So there's great satisfaction whenever music is involved. And I hope y'all are familiar with Hank Williams. Do you know Hank Williams, the hillbilly Shakespeare? Ken Burns did just an amazing documentary concerning country music. I don't know if it was last year or the year before. I think it was the year before. I don't know what but the pandemic has my timelines just all goofed up. Anyway, he did a whole segment on Hank Williams. He was so influential with his music, and I got this poem because my daddy had loved Hank so much, and I got this poem from that segment that Ken Burns produced, and this is called Hank Williams' Last Ride. I knew all the words to move it on over before I could walk properly. Daddy loved Hank, and that was good enough for me. Move over, skinny dog, 'cause a fat dog's moving in. My toddler melodies hitting every trill and dip. Daddy strumming G, C, G, D. His foot a thumping tick hound scratching fleas. He died hard, my daddy. Not like Hank, addicted to morphine and booze. But he was blue, and Hank knew the blues. Tonic tunes, Daddy called them. What might his life have been if he'd played honky tonks instead of signing up for a front row seat in the Pacific Ocean Theater, thick with Japs and dead brothers, or better still, if he'd not come home with a metal plate in his head and coal being the only means to make a living wage in the mountains. What might Hank's life have been if his heart had not given out? If he'd never checked in at the Andrew Johnson Hotel and Charles' car moved on over so my daddy could drive to Canton? Not that far from the foothills of the Appalachians where I sat, singing all sass and twang, as if somebody's life depended on it. So in Appalachian culture, we hold our family in high regard. We love the land. We idolize our elders and our ancestors, and we love to share the stories about them. So just as in the last poem, you'll also find that many times my poems include a good bit of historical information. So I wanted to share this poem tonight because I think it's especially appropriate, and you'll see as I begin reading it. Pack horse librarians. I mean no disrespect when I say, during the Great Depression, Eastern Kentucky was a sundered area, surrounded by mountains and waterways, no easy access in or out, nor any proper education until the WPA employed our grandmothers to pack saddle literacy to the underserved. This would be the only good thing coal would do for Kentucky. Coal and the Presbyterians, donating books and endowment, $28 a month to any woman with a horse or a mule and the spunk to stand up for progress, brave the weather, backwaters and hollers, to deliver emancipation by means of bound dissertation. You need to understand, this was Appalachia just before the war to end all wars. Only women of disrepute were considered working women by the church. Christian women labored in the kitchen and fields, birthed, prayed, died in them, albeit many Christian women were taught to read, if for no other reason than the Lord's word could be used to hold her back. But this was the New Deal, and all bets were off. Imagine my grandmother, top of her head barely level with the saddle's front rigging D. Flaming red hair, a brand of sass all her own, packing up at the Pine Mountain Settlement School, Harlan County, creek beds for roads, on foot, single file across crag and cliff top, sleeping in barns or lean-tos against the cold. Deliberate as any lineman or mail carrier, every treatise she carried, a nugget of gold inside her saddlebags. So I just love that story. And every time I read it, I cannot help but think of women like her, strong women like the pack horse women who paved the way. And it was just last year on August 18th that we celebrated 100 years ago, the 19th Amendment was ratified and women were given the right to vote. And it's only been 100 years. So it's really something to think about. So as time went by, many of my people on my daddy's side moved from Henrico County to North Carolina, then down to Wagner, South Carolina. And that was one time known as Pintertown. And in 1807, it was known as Gunter's Crossroads or Guntersville because of the large number of settlers named Gunter. And my great, 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 great grandparents ended up leaving Wagner or Guntersville when they heard about the opportunity to make a new settlement, and that was to be called Aiken, South Carolina. For them, Guntersville was too crowded. So you may not know that Aiken is one of the two largest cities of the central Savannah River area. The other is Savannah, Georgia. So when Aiken was celebrating the 150th anniversary of its founding, a newsletter was printed. And in this newsletter, there was some information from an old newspaper about my great-great-great-grandmother Patience, written shortly after her arrival in the Aiken area. And this is what it said, and I quote, "She was a strong woman, stubborn, who drove one of the Conestoga wagons. Her shoes were big, loose, and rough, and she wore on her head that milliner's creation you call a poke bonnet. Now, here's the best part. In spite of her gray hair, she looked brave enough to tackle a den of wildcats. That's my great-great-great-great-grandmother. I'm so proud of that. And just think about it. She's a gray-haired woman. Those Conestoga wagons were known to hold, oh my goodness, 6 ton and be driven by 8 oxen. So can you even imagine having to control all of that for 12 hours a day, day after day? And she set off to a place that wasn't even a place yet. And when I think about that, I just think, wow, her and Joanna, they were both just badass. No two ways about it. So as you can see, I come from a really long line of strong women. And when my mama was a girl, 3 of her sisters outmigrated from Appalachia to Warren, Ohio to work in the factories during the war. And one of the characters in my collection, that's, the collection I was telling you about, is named Fanny June. And if you read the entire collection, I feel pretty certain you'll come to hold Fanny June in high regard, mostly for her strength, but also her unflinching kindness. So this is another song about another personality, and I'm sure you all know Dolly Parton. And we all value her so much. She's just done such great work, just wonderful work. And part of that has been to get books into the hands of children. And we're just so grateful to Dolly for that and her program. Anyway, this is a poem about strong women and Dolly Parton, and this is called Perfect Pitch. I rode middle school bound in the back seat of Fanny June's station wagon, listening to her and her sister sing Jolene, trading verses, harmonizing on the chorus. I'm begging of you, please don't take my man. A few years later, it was 925. They were fired up, and it was Dolly's doing. This was rural Ohio, the bottom lip of northern Appalachia, right shy of Perry Como country. The women in the family worked the TS trim factory, spitting out Honda car parts. Started out on the assembly line, worked their way up to paint, then detailing, then welding. The physical labor made their bodies strong, their future bright, and like Dolly, they weren't taking any shit. They learned early on about strikes and picket lines, how important it was to organize and vote. Brave women in the workforce, determined to see their daughters inside college classrooms the hell out of Factory Row. I didn't know then I was under the wing of a feminist, taking back her power. Like Dolly, Fanny June would never use that word, no matter how much she embodied it. She was proud to hang up her welder's helmet end of shift, pick up her paycheck, sing in the front seat of a station wagon with the women she loved. Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate that. So like many of you, I imagine, Appalachians have a very special connection to animals. Some of them serve and some are pets. But either way, they are highly valued, and I couldn't let this evening go without a pet poem. And this one is The Good Life Gives No Warning. Dumped as a pup into the drive, she was the best dog I ever had. Behaved around kids and food, respected all roadways. In her prime, she would hike for hours. She preferred hideaways with large bodies of water, but a puddle would do in a pinch. Her last day, we drove to the locks along the Muskingum. She paddled the shoreline, stood, cooled her belly. We shared a mixed sandwich, an order of fries, a contented fried chicken patty belt wriggling free as she nodded off. We took the long way around to the vet's. I will miss her scolding the coyotes, bickering at every full moon. I'll be lost during trips to the mountains. A good dog never dies. I read that today. Her body's resting up on the hill behind the house, overlooking the new pond, beginning to fill with each new rain. So I just wonder how many of you all know about our granny women. I'm going to guess not too many. So I'm going to tell you about them. So even today, our granny women are the go-to experts on medicinal plants and tinctures and poultices. Yes, doctors. I'll get to that. Yep. There's actually a good deal of science behind their medical practices, and insights are handed down generation to generation in sort of an apprentice type fashion, though not just anybody can be a granny woman. It's considered a gift of knowledge and intuition, sort of an extrasensory perception that some are born with. And yes, there are still some folks who won't doctor with anyone but the granny women. They tend to look earthy. They like to be reclusive, often living off the grid. They prefer to live deep in nature, mostly because that's where they find what they need for their supplies. And those who are outliers, those not from Appalachia, often find our granny woman mysterious and even magical. And they kind of scratch their head about it. But the more you get to know about it, the more marvelous it is. And so I wrote this poem, one of a few that I've written in honor of our granny women. And this one's called Mountain Medicine from the Coronavirus Diaries. In a lather, granny woman forages along fence row and thicket, her quilted pouch slung crossways, arms hugging her ribs, ready for a bramble's lash. All morning, crows attend her, gusting their long vowed language. Spring winds poke wild fingers through the trees. Redbud boughs drop purple pearls along her path. Beneath damp pines, she plucks needles and licorice root to brew for raspy throats. Stiff knuckles loosen white oak bark for fever, a pinch of wormwood to calm the nerves. Along the creek's muddy skin, she calls yellow root and comfrey to be salved for hands already raw from washing. Scoops thick red clay and wild violets for poultice. She blends mullein and red clover, powdered, honeyed, into syrup to coat a cough. Crushes rosemary to steady chills. Boils eucalyptus with last summer's marigold to loosen mucus. Bundling sage into a burly stick, she smudges the cabin, burns mugwort shavings to calm the spirits, packs a ginseng chew between cheek and gum to fight fatigue, waits. Crows cluster in the shell bark hickory overhanging her front stoop. Their shadows long, heads bent low, as if in prayer, as if they know More than once, she has stolen a body back from death. So needless to say, I have very high regard for our granny women and all that they're able to do, basically using nature and skills that have been passed down for many, many generations. And I think in some cultures, they might even have been considered witches, though the Appalachian culture has never, used that word. But we say healer, and we're very, very proud of them. So this next poem is from my chapbook serving, and I'm a combat vet's mother, and so I like to send out a little poem each time to those who serve and have served, and to their families. And so this is a poem I wrote for my son while he was deployed, in hopes of just reminding him of home and all that he had waiting for him, and that I thought he was courageous. And this is called 10 o'clock, the day already threatening. Light making the whole place look queer. Sky dark, angles and shadows ratcheting everything down. Tops of the oaks toss back and forth, clacking their branches together. Behind them, a rumbling. Thunder? Someone's truck downshifting to take the hill. Life somehow slipping out of gear. I taught you to dream this yard in Ohio, where the grass holds the shapes of your feet, where clouds are the breaths of trees, the wind their voices. Prayed it would ward you, the blood and bone smell of it overthrowing the hiss in your head. They can say anything, do anything, bring anything out at any moment, hope to do you in. You will have spring rain, the tin roof, the windowsill, the smell of fresh baked bread, your rascally black dog haunched and cockeyed, waiting by the mailbox. And I think that applies to everyone, doesn't it? We do have a place where the grass holds the shapes of our feet, and that's where we belong. Or at least a lot of us do, and we're awful lucky for that. We're really lucky to have that place that we can call home. So I'm looking at the time, and I think I have time for one more. So I'm going to give you one more poem. I am of a generation and came from a part of the country where I grew up outside. When I was a child and a teen, we spent entire days outside. Sometimes we would pop in for lunch and that was it. We were gone again, and we wouldn't come back in until supper time. And then we'd go out again even, and our daddies would have to whistle us home at night so that we would know it's time to come in, even though it was getting dark. And we knew that we were going to have to come inside, but we waited for the whistle anyway. So this is a poem about how I spent my summers, and it's titled Wild Pixies. We was concoctors, priestesses of Manimu, devotees of Wadiwa, wearers of bare feet, our crowns, garlands of black-eyed Susan and orange butterfly weed, finger swipes of fresh squished blackberries striped across our freckled faces. Scoopers of loam beside the creek, we conjured our recipe from scratch in a weather-beaten bucket. plucks of yarrow, pink clover blossoms, spider webs, toadstools, clumps of lime green moss, a gnarly branch of sassafras to stir the pot. Chanting language known only to the Wadiwah, our harvest transformed into a goopy chunk aroma, smelling of rot, herb, and adolescent female sweat. We spread it fearlessly, ear to ear, as described in Teen Magazine, laid ourselves down beneath white bark pines to cure. Giddy as Miss America contestants, a scrap of fabric crisscrossed around our heads like a swami, like queens of the Nile. We lay still as sticks in the promise of sculpted cheekbones, a fiery afterglow, until deer flies besieged us. Their stinkometers catching wind of our heady home brew. They wheedled our lips, our nose holes, teensy scissor mouths nipping, believing they was haints sent to hold us back from our rightful life of glamour. We ran like wild pixies to the fat bottom breast of the creek, baptized our magnificent selves in the name of Monty Moo. Again, I want to thank Cheryl for having me in this evening, and I want to thank all the good folks at the library, and also all of you good folks for joining me this evening. I'm honored and I'm humbled beyond words to have shared this evening with you all, and I'm very open to answering some questions if you all have any. So, please do let me know, and I'd be happy to do that. If you want to turn on your videos and we can
Right. Turn on your videos and unmute yourselves. We do have some comments, of course. Some people commented about how touching some of the poems were at the moment they were reading them. One about the granny makers, and of course the doggy poem. One person, Elizabeth, asked, and she's not at her seat, so I don't know. Maybe we'll save that answer till later. So she asked how we separate tradition and ethnicity from stereotypes. So
how we separate tradition and ethnicity from stereotype, I don't see how you could. I don't see how you could.
There she is.
We don't. I think ethnicity is steeped in stereotype and tradition. And so I think what maybe you're asking is, how can we educate ourselves better concerning people's ethnicity and their tradition, and then understand the correct way to discuss it and talk about it, and to lift it up, is what I'm kind of assuming maybe that question is. Okay, good, because that's what
I did a bad job of spelling ethnicity, sorry, but yeah, I was just typing away. But I teach in a high school here in Tuscarawas County, and I'm not from this area. We grew up in Michigan. So Jim's grandma's from Warren, though, and one of my grandmas is from West Virginia. And but I think it's really important to promote that the kids are from Appalachia, but tell them that they don't necessarily have to be bound by that, especially the girls.
Oh, goodness no. You're bound by the positive.
Right. Right.
And it's okay to let go of the negative. I think that's true in any life. And that's the hard part, isn't it, for our teens? It really is. It's hard for our teens. Mm-hmm. Any teens that are facing minoritization. It's very hard to overcome all of that. And I think taking pride in who you are is so important, no matter how you can do that, whether it's the color of your skin or where your people are from. And I think that some kids unfortunately don't know that much about their history, and it makes it very hard.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Other
I hope,
comments?
I hope that answered. I hope that answered your
Yeah.
question, Elizabeth.
I mean, another comment I have, because I more so with the college kids when I'm a little bit more direct with them and teaching with them, but I think that it's such a unique area, especially when you haven't grown up here, that I really like to promote the region itself in how beautiful it is. And I think that when kids know that they come from a special area, they can kind of like have it both ways in a way. Like they can
Yes.
say, I'm from this area. But I think that for certain kids with certain backgrounds, it really takes a lot of support and a lot of love and a lot of pushing, even more than support, like pushing. And
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
know in this group, there's probably a lot of us who are teachers. And I'm sure that, we all have those stories about, amazing kids that teachers help to push, and then coming back to help, or, going away to school and coming back and doing amazing things with the area. So
I agree. And I realize that as educators, we can only push so far.
mhm.
But if my granny hadn't pushed me, I would not be here today. And by the same train of thought, if my granny hadn't been, and my great greats had not been the kind of women they were, I certainly wouldn't be allowed to be a poet, would I? I'd have to have a real job. But because they worked so hard and sacrificed so much, and I get real emotional when I talk about this. And I'm lucky. I'm really, really lucky. But I know we all need a push, don't we? And I recently retired, as Cheryl mentioned, from the script school. And what I'm finding now is I think some of our kids are lost because they are looking for those roots. They're looking for roots. Now, if you can't find your real live roots, look for the next best, right? And if you can root yourself in a teacher or a clergy person or librarian, whoever you can root yourself to, that's when you start having success, right? And like you said, you gotta push them though. You gotta push them just like any mother bird does in the nest. And I think the biggest challenge we have is how hard do we push? Because they're fragile. Our kids are fragile right now. They've been, 9/11, they've had 2 wars, they've, now they've had a pandemic, and they are wounded, and it's real hard for them. It really, really is. And it's not safe to go outside and play all day now by yourself, and it's just tragic. It's tragic. And so, yes, we have to be especially sensitive. We have to try to reach all that we can with what we have. We only have so much in us, right? We can only give so much because there's only so much in us. But what we're able to give, I hope we give. And I think as educators too, do we not have those handful of students that you realize, oh my gosh, they're just going to be great. You just know they are. You just know they are. And that's the most wonderful feeling in the world, just being able to do that with as many as possible.
Kari,
Yes, Paul.
on your opening statements about how you pronounce Appalachia, Appalachian, and all that kind of stuff, I've done some section hiking on the Appalachian Trail over the years in different places. And it wasn't too long after being on a couple of them through hikes, well, not through hikes, but, section hiking in some of the different towns, they said, we can tell you're from the north. And a couple people corrected us in different places. So I really understand what you're saying about that. And that is kind of a touchy spot with some of the folks.
Paul, you are right, particularly with Deep South Appalachians. They feel very strongly about that. They do.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. Thank you
Well,
very much for coming.
Oh my goodness, it's my pleasure. And I'm so glad you told me about that and that you hiked the Appalachian Trail. My husband and I have been on and off it a little bit, but we've never seriously hiked it. I really admire you for doing that.
Well, I haven't done that many miles. I think I probably only got 250 miles, and it's taken me, I don't know how many years to do it, but it's really been enjoyable. One thing about like in the north where they have the huts up in New Hampshire and places like that, we want to go back. But the COVID has put the blame on that. You know, we were staying in rooms with 6, 8, 10 people, and you don't even think, I'm in my age, I won't even think about that now. If you said, hey, let's you and I go tomorrow, I'd say, we'll think about it. I don't want to be in group settings like that anymore.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
makes a big
Hopefully
difference for all of us too.
it does. And hopefully that's not forever, Paul. We're all hoping we're coming over that hilltop. We're just hoping we're starting to maybe go down the other side.
Yeah.
So
But
maybe
one,
next year.
yeah, all we can do is hope. But one thing about it is though, when you're on the trail, you're all kind of like the same. What city you come from. People help
Wonderful.
each other and watch out for each other. And whether you speak Appalachian or Appalachian or whatever, it doesn't make any difference. You're all out there together.
That's wonderful. I'm so glad you shared that, Paul.
Okay, well, thank you for being here tonight. I really enjoyed it. I lost the signal here for a little bit. I continually, Cheryl's helped me and coached me through trying to figure out how to use this Zoom. Thank you again, Cheryl.
You are very welcome, because when I saw your name on the list, I go, yes, he's going to come back and try. So that I'm thrilled about that. I'm so happy to help you.
I'm
Yeah,
still not
great, Paul.
sure of everything, but without you, I couldn't have listened. I could have probably listened to the program, but that would have been as far as it was. So I'll get off the air here. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Paul. Thank you. Other people?
I'd like to say,
Yes, Janet.
I first heard Kari at an Ohio Poetry Association workshop at the Serpent Mound. And that's when I first heard about the Appalachian women. And are you still promoting that? Is that still going on?
Yes, we're just getting ready to start our 13th season. We have 2 more readings. We have one reading in May at the Towngate Theater. Of course, these are all virtual. Towngate Theater at Oglebay Park in West Virginia is sponsoring that one. And the Dairy Barn Art Center here in Athens County, southeastern Ohio, is promoting the one on June 11th. And then we're all set, to have submissions come in beginning May 1st through July 30th. And then we will travel next year. We're going to wait until spring again. So 1 year from now, we will hopefully be traveling again. And we travel throughout Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky. And also I do the anthology. And so every year there's an anthology called Women Speak. And we have all the writers who've juried in, and then we also have fine art. We have fine artists. I'm trying to get one to come up here who submit their fine art. Oh, isn't that the way it always goes? You can't get one. There we go. So we have spoken word and fine art inside of each of the anthologies. And I do one of these every year. This is the 6th one. So we'll be working on the 7th one. And we have women who have participated in almost every Appalachian state. There are 420 counties. We, of course, not had everybody from every county, but almost every state. And then we've had out-migrators living in Florida, New Mexico, California that join us. And they fly in and stay in our homes. Well, we'll see how that goes with COVID. But anyway, and we travel around. We go to Berea College in Kentucky. We go to West Virginia University in Morgantown. We're going to go to Stewart's Opera House in Nelsonville. And we go to Ohio University. I mean, we just travel all over. Reading the work that's selected by our jurors, and every year there are different jurors, and it's really fun and exciting. And we've had people win all kinds of awards not only poet laureates, but we've had a Prindy winner. We've had a Weatherford Award winner. We have people who've won Best of the Net awards and Pushcart awards. And we've even had an artist who's won a Pulitzer. So it's just pretty amazing, the quality, and people are always astounded. I'm like, you're astounded because it's Appalachia, right? You got to get over that. You got to get over that, because it's not true. It's amazing, the talent here. So thank you for asking that question, Janet. And my goodness, how many years ago was that reading at the Serpent Mound? Like 4 or 5 years ago. But that was so wonderful. I loved that.
Something like that, yes. It was wonderful, yes.
It was a beautiful, spiritual place.
Thank you.
Well, since you brought up I guess I wanted to ask you, so you travel around as the poet laureate, or simply as a poet. You don't have to be the poet laureate to participate in the Women Speak project, but how did you get to be the poet laureate of Ohio?
Well, I was serving as the poet laureate of Athens County, and I was beating the bushes, getting everybody out. We were having potluck dinners, and I was doing everything I possibly could to shake out the poets and writers, everybody, songwriters, fiction writers, everybody, shake out everybody who was writing from the county, and each of us get to know each other, you know, because that's how you get strong, right? You build networks, and we lift each other up, and you hold each other up when you get a rejection. It's a lot easier to take when you can contact your buddies and say, well, I got a rejection, and they go, oh, up that's their loss. You know, you have all that going on, you know, that's very helpful. But one thing I made them do is stand up and read their work. We would have events, and I would literally cajole them into standing up and reading their work. And some people, it was one of the hardest things they'd ever done. But once they did it, they were so proud of themselves. And many of them have continued to do so, and have done really well, and have been doing readings. So when the call for state poet laureate came up, I got, I don't know how many emails. I mean, a ton of emails from all over the state, because I've traveled the state extensively, you know, with the Women of Appalachia, and just my own readings and my own friends, and just meeting people and wanting to meet Appalachian pockets of folks throughout Ohio. And of course, obviously, I've traveled a lot to Kentucky, study with a group in Hyndman. And so I said, well, you know, I'm not really, I can't imagine myself the Ohio Poet Laureate. And they said to me repeatedly, you made us do it. You made us do it, and you're not going to do it? You're not going to even try? And I said, okay, I will throw my hat in the ring, and we'll see what happens. And it was so kind, because a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful person named Denty Moore, who's a renowned writer, lives in our county, and he was the first to nominate me. And then people literally from all over the state pitched in and nominated me for the position. Now, whether that had the influence, I don't know exactly what did. But when it was all said and done, as they say, I got a phone call from the governor's office saying, we have selected you. And I was like, huh? What? Do you have the right number? So I must say, though, I've had just the most delightful time, and I've met so many wonderful people just like yourselves, and have always been made to feel very welcome. And I do love having the opportunity to spread what I call the gospel of Appalachia, so that people are more aware, and that maybe they can look at things a little differently, as you know, concerning Appalachia. And it's hard. We have some people who write award-winning books and blame Appalachia for their failures. And it's not Appalachia that failed them. It's poverty that failed them. And poverty is a national tragedy. It's not an Appalachian tragedy or or singled into Appalachia, which Appalachian is often equated with poverty. So I get to kind of go out and talk about these things that are not easy to talk about, but I don't mind having the conversations. And I will go on record of saying too, I admire anyone who writes. I admire anybody, especially if they write an award-winning book. That's fabulous. I'm so happy for them. But I do have to speak up about Appalachia when I can. And I'm not saying I'm always right either. I'm always willing to listen to both sides. But I do like to have the opportunity to have my say. So it has given me that opportunity. And I feel very grateful to the governor and everyone in the state who has embraced me. I've had the opportunity to work with incarcerated teens and adults, with women in recovery. I'm going to be working with peer recovery folks, helping them put together some workshops so they can work with their clients. And so I just feel very blessed. I've had a very, very blessed time being the Ohio Poet Laureate, and I haven't had to leave my house to do it. I've been sitting here at my computer and I've had just the most marvelous interactions. I cannot even tell you. So I just feel very grateful.
Well, we are grateful that you came to be with us because, you know, you talk about poverty in a region, but your poems certainly show that there's more than financial poverty. There's a richness there in relationships and in traditions that, you know, that spring up out of that creativity to overcome poverty or whatever. It's just so, I don't know, to hear and actually to hear you read to hear the poems in the poet's own voice, that was so special. Yes, the rhythm, just everything was so perfect. And, you know, we live in this fast-paced life, and we were talking about our young people and people of all ages. We are really churning all day long. And when you start talking, the tone of your voice, the cadence, I guess the sweetness with which you say the words, because you can tell you really feel them, they're from your heart. It just slows us down and brings us to a level where you really do. I think I feel like personally, I leave feeling like I am rooted in something. I'm anchored, and you don't have to, you can take the positive things of that. And if you want to change things, you can, but just be sure that what you are really comes from where you are and what you were brought up with. And you did just a fabulous job. I think everybody will agree. We're so lucky to have you with us. So
Well, thank you everyone so much for coming. And, you know, I'll just say one more thing. I think we have to, when we're talking about our kids, Elizabeth, I think also we have to be real careful with that bootstraps narrative, because, you know, not everybody gets those chances. Not everybody gets those breaks. Not everybody gets the scholarship. Not everybody.
right.
So I think we have to be real careful about, and that's another thing that and Elizabeth, you have something to say. So you say.
Well, no, I agree with you so much. And again, without revisiting it totally, I tell my older students, even at the high school, because of who you are, you're going to have a lot of people try to sabotage you. And so you have to work harder, and you do have to work harder, and you know, so I think it's really, I don't know. I mean, it's fun to see that growth in kids. And I know at our high school, they've been working on poetry this week. I know because I hang out with a couple of English teachers. So yeah. So, you know, it's not just for, you know, old people or nerds or whatever, you know, some of the kids really, we have a young male who teaches the creative writing course there, who's fantastic. So he does poetry too. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to hear that. And I've applied for a grant, and I do not know that it will come through, but if it does, there's going to be opportunity for teen poets, and I'm really excited about it. So y'all, you put some energy into the universe for me that I get that grant, because it would just be so wonderful to lift up some of our teen voices. because they don't get a lot of opportunity. And I
Will
think,
you do that
think-
through your position at OU?
no, I'll do it through my position as of the Ohio Poet Laureate.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll have to see. We'll have to see. I think I'll find out this month. But if I do it, I'll get back with you folks, because I know exactly where you are. I'll get a hold of Cheryl, and she'll connect us, and y'all might know of some teens who are writing that would like to get involved in the project. It'd be wonderful. So.
Right. And since we're talking about encouraging people to write or to share what they've written, Patty is on the Zoom with us tonight, and Patty Feller and I are working together to bring our poetry night together. So obviously it's beautiful to have the poem read by the person who wrote it, but we are all touched by poetry at some point, and we might have a favorite poem. So I encourage people, the people who are here, if you'd like to read, contact me or contact Patty. And if you know of somebody who writes, encourage them to contact us to come to that Zoom meeting for poetry night. And just come and listen, because as you can tell, it's just so, I don't know, it's just so peaceful. And maybe not all poetry is peaceful, but this poetry tonight was certainly uplifting, and I think very positive. So, yeah. So I encourage everybody to read some poetry. The month is only half over, not quite. So you know, the website for the American, I know I'm not going to get the name right. The American Association of Poets or something, North American Poets. Anyway, they have 30 suggestions of what you could do to celebrate Poetry Month. And there's some of them that just, you know, you think, oh, I could do that. You know, and then there are others that are a little more challenging, like some people put lines from Ap-uh-Lach-uh on a stencil, and they went out and stenciled their sidewalk. I thought that was very cool. So people walking along could read lines from poems. I just thought that was so cool. So, you know, there are lots of good ideas out there if we just take the time to kind of look for them. So this could be the breakout year that we could try something different in our lives. So, yeah. All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming, and a special thanks to Kari Gunter-Seymour. Remember, her book is entitled A Place So Deep Inside America It Can't Be Seen. It's at the library. You know, I read it, but I certainly heard the poems in a different way tonight with her voice. And I guess if you're going to get it, just read it out loud, because it has a whole different, you know, than the words on the page are one thing, but the hearing it, the sharing it is quite another thing. So
yeah, it was wonderful.
Yes, I think so too.
Very wonderful. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, I hope I
Thank
do
you
hope
so
I
much.
see y'all again. That'd be wonderful. So take
That
care.
would be
Many
wonderful.
blessings, everyone.
Yeah. Blessings to you, Carrie. Thank you.
Good
Thank
night.
you so much. Thank you.
My pleasure. Good night.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.